Good morning, or afternoon, or evening. This is your second video. This one is coinciding with our look at John Updike's A&P. It'll be a very short video. I won't try to comprehensively tell you everything about this story. That comes from you reading it and putting your primary blog post and 2 comments on the blog that says Updike on our Blackboard page. However, I wanted to give you just a little bit of background. On John Updike and on some of the concepts we'll start to use as we read the various forms of literature in this class. First of all, if you have the 10th edition of our Literature, the Human Experience book, we're on page 127. A&P is a very short little story written early in John Updike's career. Now, you may not have heard a ton about Updike recently. He died a few years ago, actually after, a couple years after he gave a very well-attended, popular lecture at UNCW. It was a big privilege to see him here, but he's known internationally as sort of one of the great men of letters of his time. He wrote 50-plus books. He wrote novels, he wrote nonfiction, he wrote reviews, he wrote poetry, badly, but he was known as one of the last great sort of multiple thread, all across the different genres writer. And his best-known books are the Rabbit series, or the series of novels starting with Rabbit Run. But he's also best well-known for short stories. And everybody who's ever studied literature, pretty much, in America at least, has read A&P. This one came in 1961, so it's before, really, the Cultural Revolution we've heard a lot about from later in the 60s. And I think it concerns some of the themes that are embodied by that revolution. Now, Theme is sort of like the main idea, the takeaway, the central underlying meaning. It's not always stated. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you have to glean it. You have to sort of read between the lines to understand what the theme is. And we'll be talking more about theme. That's sort of a basic one as we go forward. Now, with Updike, one thing you'll notice is this is written in first person. Now, you've probably heard a little bit about first person, third person. First person is I, as in this case, the narrator is a first person narrator who is a teenage boy, somewhere in his middle to late teens. And that's not necessarily Updike, that's just the character, and the experience is filtered through this lens, this 15-year-old boy's lens. Updike was not a 15-year-old boy writing this, but he is going to try to adopt the thinking, the voice, of this first person, of this boy as his first person narrator. So notice the difference in stories we read that are in first person, like this one, and in third person, he, she, it. When you have an outside narrator, whether it's the author or someone else, writing the story in terms of another person, a he or a she usually. So we learn a lot about the theme and about the writer based on this first-person narrator. What kind of character is he creating here? How does this voice reflect that person? So one thing I want you to look at when you're reading over A&P is exactly who is this narrator? Do we like this guy? Do we agree with his perceptions on everything from women to consumer culture to coming of age, this transition into adulthood where he has a greater understanding and maturity of what's happening around him. So we'll think about that. Also, I'd like you to think about, what are the subtexts here? What is being written about that is not necessarily stated on the page in an obvious way? And 2 that come to mind right away. One would be the dawn of consumer culture in America. This is the 60s after the biggest sort of consumer explosion in the history of our country in the 1950s, where the middle class really joined the larger consumer culture with branding, with advertising, with nationwide chains. In part, Updike and his narrator seem to be commenting on this, on what it means, on what it's replacing. So look into every time he mentions the name of a brand or of a product or of how people are reacting to it, what the meaning is, how it indicates class, who's of higher, lower, middle, working class. Another one here, Updike for a long time has been accused of being a misogynist, meaning someone who doesn't respect women or is sexist in some way. And on one hand, you can see some evidence of that in here, right? Our narrator starts with, in walks these 3 girls in nothing but bathing suits. I'm in the 3rd checkout slot. She was a chunky kid with a good tan and a sweet, broad, soft-looking can. Uh, Surely not the most elevated rhetoric we could imagine in terms of describing a young girl or a teenage girl coming into the store. On the other hand, this is a 15-year-old narrator in 1961. So we have to ask ourselves, is Updike actually achieving something closer to reality here, to how a 15 or a 17-year-old boy would appraise a young, a teenage girl his own age walking into the store? Still, the whole sexual revolution is well underway. And you'll notice from Queenie, the alpha female of the three girls who walk in, that she seems to embody some of the new licentiousness or the bared shoulders, the new sexuality emerging in America at the time. So two major themes that Updike's dealing with, and that may not be the only major themes, but two of the major themes seem to be the relationship of women and men in this new period of the dawn of the sexual revolution, which is just around the corner. Another is how are Americans going to relate to each other in a mass culture, in a mass consumer culture, driven mostly by consumer goods and money and the making of money, this kind of thing. One might be able to say that this was a pretty prescient story, as in prophetic, that it looked into some themes that would become major as time went on. And we can look from 50 years later to say he was right. Consider some of these themes. Consider how he uses first person and also the general use of language here. Is this an elevated rhetoric? Or is he trying to be more in keeping with this boy who might not be a rhetorician of very high caliber at this time? And finally, ask yourself, is there a coming of age in this story? Is there a moment, a revelation, an epiphany for this narrator where he sees and understands something he did not before, that he in some way grew up here in a major or meaningful way? I'd like to know what you think that coming of age is. So there's just a few thoughts to get you started on this one. This is a short little story. Please do make your post, which is a question, a good insightful question, followed by your attempt at an answer, which should include some kind of quote and textual analysis, followed by a follow-up question, a secondary question that you're looking for some help from the class. That's your post, and then 2 comments on other people's posts. And I will be participating. You will, by this time, have a sample post on there to look at. So I look forward to seeing what you post about this one, and I hope you get something out of the story. We'll be moving on in the next class to James Joyce's Araby, an equally, I think, small and important story in the rise of the kind of literature we study today in fiction. Shoot me an email. You can give me a call if necessary. Come into the office and talk over any issues that come up, and we will start building our vocabulary as well as our repertoire of these concepts and meanings as we go through the various writers in this course. So this is John Updike. I hope you enjoy it. I don't vouch for it, but I hope you enjoy a lot of what we read this semester, and I'll see you tomorrow or as soon as you watch the next video. All right, thanks a lot.